Okay, good afternoon. Tom Trio here, qualifying broker for Keller Williams here in Santa Fe. And we need to do a little bit of an update on the new listing agreement. It's really not new, but it hasn't really changed that much. But there are a few things that I thought would be important for all of you to have at some point and for you to look at, particularly the new brokers. Kind of want to give you guys a little bit of heads up. There's some ways that you're going to be doing some new listings or purchase agreement. This one happens to be on listings. And one of the first things that you want to do is you want to email me because I can send you an annotated copy of this exact video that we're going to be doing today. So you have something to work with. When you're watching the video, it's always the best way to do it. Get the annotated copy for me. You can make your own notes along the way. And of course, if you have questions down the road, you can ask me and I can at least go back to that annotated copy that we have. So another one thing I would like to kind of share my screen with you guys a little bit. Let's see if I can find this particular item. Okay, here it is. This is my website for all the new brokers. You're going to find it at tomtrujillorealestate.com. Tom Trujillo, Trujillo spelled correctly, Trujillo, tomtrujillorealestate.com. And you'll see Selling Casitas Haciendas. This is my website. But at the tail end of the search here, you'll see that there are a number of classes that you can see that you can be taking. These are all videos. We're at the broker classes today, the ones that I actually do videos on, and we'll be doing the listing agreement. So the new one will be uploaded and you can click there, email me for an annotated copy, sit back, pour yourself a glass of wine and see if we can get this thing going. So let's go ahead and we're going to go ahead and start off with doing get back to that. So we can start off and doing the agreement itself. Share the screen, and here we go. And we're going to start off with the listing agreement for exclusive right to sell. First thing that I always tell people to know where they're at is if you look down at the very bottom, you'll see NMAR form 1106-2020, okay? And you're gonna find this and you're gonna have to learn as a new broker, if you haven't, that you have access to all the agreements through Paragon, through Instanet is a platform. Of course, the Keller Williams platform is through Command. That's another whole class you'll probably have to be learning a little bit of working with people on, and you'll be going through DocuSign. Or lastly, some people still are using actually Dotloop, which was our original Keller Williams format that we did, and that's where the contracts are. But that's another whole class, or for the new broker, it's probably a one-on-one with me to understand how you access all that stuff, or through a mentor broker as well. But we're going to go ahead and we're going to go through here today kind of rapidly, but it'll kind of give you an idea of some of the changes that we have here. So with no further ado, it's New Mexico Association of Realtors, NMAR, okay, listing agreement, exclusive right to sell. Keep in mind, this is a residential listing. I always like to point out this first line that I have highlighted. All brokers in this transaction owe the following broker duties to all buyers and sellers in this transaction, even if the broker is not representing the buyer. What does that mean? That means that regardless where you're at, you still are indirectly having to make sure that you are representing your seller, since this is a listing agreement, but you also represent the buyer in regard of how you act with them, how you provide information to them, even though they may not be your client. You are, code of ethics, make sure that you're working closely with the other broker and that, things don't slip up. I can't tell you how many times I've had people contact me and say, wow, Tom, I can't get a hold of the listing broker, and they're calling me on Saturday. And it's not my listing, it's your listing. So you have to make yourself accessible to that. And it makes me a little angry, I guess, when I get those calls because they can't find their listing broker. If you are going to be going out of town or going to be an extended period of time, make sure that you communicate that to your sellers and make sure that there's somebody that they can contact if they need to. The catch-22 many times is you've got a listing maybe you're not available, maybe you're out of town, maybe you're on vacation, and an offer comes. And that listing broker is gone, there's nobody to give it to. So, I think it's always very wise that you have yourself some backup. So that's really what that is. All of us have gone enough through our classes, the old days, of understanding what our responsibilities, our broker duties are. The honesty, being in compliant, making sure everything's done in a written agreement, making sure that all disclosures that are out there on the table. And of course, the making sure things are done in a timely manner. That's going back to that same scenario that, you just don't walk away from your listing and not worry about it. And I'll be back next Monday or Tuesday. That is a live, active thing. I tell brokers all the time, if you want business, all you got to do is plan a vacation, because that's when it always happens. Be knowledgeable of the transaction itself, and of course, maintain confidential information learned by your client. Okay. Biggest problems that brokers have is they don't take the time to read this. And even though I go through a synopsis of some of the places that you can trip up on, take the time, read it, and read it before you have somebody call you and say, hey, Tom, I want you to list my house. Oh my God, I haven't even read the listing agreement, and you're in a scramble. This is the time to, again, as I said, email me, say you want an annotated copy, read through it. Schedule an appointment with me if that's what you need to do, and say, Tom, explain this a little further, more than you did in the video itself. This is something that comes up all the time. What are we? Exclusive agency, dual agency, or transaction broker? At Keller Williams, we are transaction brokers. Exclusive agency is the old way of doing business. That's when you have a fiduciary responsibility to the seller or buyer, but you have an exclusive, meaning that you have fiduciary not only for what you say, but what they say. I always tell people of an incident where I had an individual who probably is one of the last or few people in Santa Fe who still does agency. And he was communicating to me basically what he thought that they would take and they wouldn't take. Then when I made an offer, he said, wait, Tom, this is not correct. Wait a minute. You're an agent. You're acting as an agent. So, you go explain to your seller that you communicated to me this price because you're speaking on his behalf. Same thing can happen the other way around. So we don't have to get into a big, long story of it. Most people who have been in real estate all these years understand the fiduciary responsibility for all those new brokers who have come in. Simple case is you're a transaction broker. Non-fiduciary relationship created by law. All right? Again, reading through this, the seller has previously indicated he or she will say, these are no-nos. The seller will agree to financing terms. The seller is motivated or listing. All these kind of things that we all accidentally trip into. Unless you are told in writing, these are not the kind of conversations that you're having with a buyer's broker. Basically, you have to zip it up unless you are told in specific comments by the seller, yeah, it's okay if you tell them the terms, and it's okay if you tell them that we're willing to take a lower price. Bottom line is, just put your hat on and saying, look, I'm trying to do the best that I can for my seller. I can't disclose that information to you. I always highlight throughout the annotated, you'll see the seller's initials. As a new broker, these are the ones that slip by you. And when you're going through compliance to get paid, in other words, when you upload all of the documents to the compliance officers to make sure you've done all your paperwork, these are the ones that slip by you. And you know what? Those are the things that trip up. And before you know, you're hoping to get paid. You don't get paid because you haven't done some simple homework of making sure that initials are taken care of. Transaction coordinator. This is relatively new in the industry. In the past, people would have administrative assistants and so forth, but today you can hire a transaction coordinator. In our office, we have Paula Travis, who's a transaction coordinator. I tell people, there's nothing wrong with hiring them when you first start off to help, but truthfully, to be honest with you, where the transaction coordinator really begins to be a benefit is when you have so many deals going on. You have 8 or 9 deals going on that you can't keep up with all your paperwork. That's the time that you want to hire a transaction coordinator. It shouldn't just be a fail-safe. You know, I just want to go sell, so I'm not going to learn all the paperwork. Because believe me, you need to know the paperwork. Because at the end of the day, you're still going to be that person who's going to be responsible for the transaction itself. So unless you are extremely busy, you know, then that's the time to be looking at a transaction coordinator. And they too have to be under my license. So we sometimes have had people say, well, can I hire this transaction coordinator out of Albuquerque? They do all the work up at the academy office. Well, no, because they're not under my license. And that's a responsibility as your qualifying broker. The only time that you can hire a transaction coordinator outside of our offices if that transaction coordinator is a qualified broker. Okay. So we're going to kind of keep going through this thing, the things you shouldn't have to worry about. So that first 2 pages, as you recall there, okay, is really your agreement that you have with the seller. From that point forward, you have a agreement that the seller has as a listing with the company, with Keller Williams himself. People ask me all the time, well, what does that mean? Well, that means that if something was to happen to me as a listing broker, the listing still survives. It keeps moving forward through the company. They have to be assigned to somebody, whatever it may be. All right. There's your seller's broker firm is Keller Williams Realty here in Santa Fe, and your signature. There you go. That's the place you get assigned. Okay, let's get in the meat of things. Okay. Exclusive services, the undersigned, the seller's name as they use in legal documents. You can compare it to your tax records, and your tax records can be found in Paragon through taxes. But too often, you know, for example, my name is Tom, and my legal name is Thomas B. My wife is Leonora, and its legal name is M. Leonora Trio. Start off from the very beginning to get it the way that they would like their deed to read. It's a lot easier, and if you do this right off the bat, making sure it's correct, then you're not having to go in there later and change amendments and change different disclosures or you know, documents that you're doing throughout the transaction itself. Okay, so you can see here, there it is. Keller Williams Realtor is the name of the brokerage. So it's not between you and the seller, it's between the brokerage. All right. The term. How long should I be doing that? Okay, so date of record. In other words, this will begin on, I don't know, January 5th and terminate maybe 6 months from now because the market's pretty hot. At the most, maybe a year from now. Okay, that's a discussion to have with your seller. You know, the longer you have it, the better you have a chance of selling it. But in this climate, you may be finding that your sellers are going to be pushing back and says, you know what, I want this thing in 3 to 6 months. That's reality. That's a real one. But also keep in mind that the date of record, okay, is the day that you go in and do the listing. That doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be listing it that day. You can get a waiver, but keep in mind now with a clear cooperation policy, just because you have a listing that says it's going to be, you've got an agreement starting today or tomorrow, you can't be marketing this thing until you have this thing as a listing in the MLS. We'll get a little further down to explain that further. There's your property, your address, and your legal description. I gave you a little bit of help here. If you go into Paragon, you can go to tax, you go to the county, put in the street name or the owner's name. That's the best. Less is better. So in my case, you would put, I'd go into Paragon tax, the county of Santa Fe. You would go into Cerro Gordo, okay? Or you might put Trujillo. Boy, a bunch of Trios in New Mexico, all right? But you might put in Trujillo and Cerro Gordo, and 2 people are going to come in, me and my wife. That's it. So in reality, less is better. So play with that ahead of time. You know, don't wait till you have a listing ready to go. These are things that you should be doing on your off time. I used to have a broker friend of mine saying, stay busy until you are busy. And these are exactly the kind of things you do when you're starting off and you have that contract in hand. Say, I'm going to do a mock contract so I can have a feeling. Maybe do it on your own house or your parents' house or your friend's house, just to have something going so you can feel what it feels like to do a listing agreement. Meets and bounds description attached as an exhibit. You might have a survey. 9 times out of 10 you won't, but if you do, that's fine, and you can name it exhibit A, B, C, whatever. But if you don't have a survey in hand, just put not applicable, but you do know it's in the Santa Fe County, Los Alamos County, Rio Arriba County, Bernalillo County, wherever you're doing your listing yourself. Here it gives you the options, the type of property. In this case, since we're doing this as a residential, I've checked off it's a residential property, it's resale. But it gives you other places as well. New construction, site built, manufactured housing, that's a fun one. Could be commercial, could be office. All these items in here pretty much is very self-explanatory, all right? Other rights, unless otherwise provided, convey all the other rights. Could be wind, solar, water. In this case, this is a residential property. There is none, all right? Then we get into the fun one about fixtures and appliances and personal and exclusion. Easiest way to look at that, a fixture is fastened, a fix means that the removal of the article causes damage to real property. So if you have a curtain rod that is anchored into the cement walls, that's a fixture, because you know if you remove them, they're going to have to be replaced or it's going to have to be fixed. Sometimes people want to take their fixtures. Well, guess what? That's the time that you have that conversation with your seller. Says, you know, I know those curtain rods are very important to you, and you want to take your curtain rods and your drape. Tell you what, if you want to do them, take them out now, because it will end up being an issue when somebody says, man, I love those curtain rods. Same thing happens with what I call grandma's chandelier that she's given the family. It's permanently affixed into an electrical box. May have chain on or whatever. Beautiful chandelier that grandma gave you or gave her, your mom or whatever. It's an heirloom in the family. If you don't want that to stay, take it down and then go down to Home Depot and put a new fixture in there that you're willing to let go. But that's the difference between a fixture and personal property. This gives you a good listing of all the things that are considered fixtures. There you go. Everything from, you know, the attached mirrors in the bathrooms. Here's some new ones that they've kind of snuck in on us. The built-in Murphy beds. That includes the mattress. So, you know, why anybody would want somebody else's mattress, who knows? I've been told the reason being is a lot of the Murphy beds have specialized mattresses that only fit that Murphy bed. Okay, I get it. Same thing with solar panel powders, okay? This is one that you have to be very careful. A lot of times, you know, we get so excited about selling the property, we forget to look up and say, oh my goodness, they have solar panels up there. Well, they're going to stay there because they're fixed to the house, right? But you may also find out from your seller, wow, are those totally paid for? Do you have some kind of a lease agreement? You know, because that can turn into being a lien if you're not careful. The last one I always like, and this is, they finally have put this in here, is the TV wall mounts, all the flat screens that we all now have in our houses. Everybody, I know I have a zillion moment throughout my house, even here in the office, I have a mount that's in the wall. It's permanently there. But it doesn't necessarily mean that I can't take the TV off. Now, the catch-22 to this is, you know, that having a TV mount without a TV is going to look pretty ugly. So if they plan to take the TV, and you can ask them that, say, you know, great, if you're going to take the TV, let's get the mount out. Let's get somebody in here to replaster the holes. Let's get a painter in here to paint over the holes. So those are just those little things that can catch you up before you realize what's going on. Okay? Personal property, what does that mean? There you go. You've got window covers, you know, those are considered personal property. Those are really more like drapes. Be careful, because if you have the blinds that are permanently attached to the inside of the windowsill, there's a very good possibility that those are fixtures. So be careful of that. Same thing with the decorative mirrors above the vanities. Up here it said that attached mirrors. Down here it says decorative mirrors. So, you know, sometimes people put some pretty nice stuff. You go through Indian market or Spanish market, there's a lot of beautiful mirrors that people have bought personally for themselves and they want to take it with them. So make sure that you are removing those things. And I've always told people, if you don't want to sell it, make sure you replace it. Put something else in there. Same thing goes with your dryers, your washer, your garage door remotes. I don't know how many people have bought those because they've gone away and also they've sold the house and they left the garage door opener in their car and story. Another thing here is refrigerator. And notice that they now have it in the plural sense. S, refrigerators. What does that mean? That means that you have that neat, cool keg cooler that you keep your beer in the garage. That's a refrigerator. And you know, if you check off that, make sure that you make the beer keg refrigerator out there an exclusion. I even would maybe even mark out the S if it's just the kitchen one. Okay. Same thing with fireplace grades and screens. Those are ones that are personal property. If they're not going to sell them, they're not going to take them with them. You know, be prepared. That lands up being in a fight, or you're landing to go to Ace Hardware to buy a brand new one because the buyer said, well, you said you were going to leave it. All right. Other things that happen to you as well is in this particular listing agreement, they said, God, we hate that hot tub in the back. It's old, it's smelly, and it's got mold, but we don't want to move it. So we want to include the hot tub in the backyard. So boom, click, there it is, hot tub in the backyard. So when you do your listing and you put it on the MLS, you're going to put hot tub. It's going to go with the property. Here's that exclusion. Following items are excluded from the sale. Grandma's chandelier. So if they're going to leave it hung up there, they're going to put that in there. And I definitely would be putting notes in the MLS that grandma's chandelier does not stay. It is excluded. Believe me, you want to make sure that you do that. Best thing to do, grandma's chandelier, is that precious to them? Tell them to go to Home Depot and buy another one, because inevitably somebody's going to go in there and say, we bought the house because we love the chandelier. All right, here we go. Listing price. In this case, I use $685,000. Whatever your amount of money is, whatever you've come to the listing, that's another whole new education of learning to do a CMA, working with a more experienced broker. And there's nothing wrong with that. I tell that to new brokers all the time. You know, when you're first starting off on this business, you're going to need help. If you have a possibility of having a mentor broker that you give up part of your commission to them, do it, because they will help you get through it. And believe me, I get enough phone calls from everybody who's doing their first transactions. And there are times that, you know, they can't find me and they're in the middle of a deal. So sometimes it's beneficial to have yourself a mentor. We're looking at actually doing a program here, maybe coming in the new year, of having a mentors program that you can select to have a mentor to work with you, particularly if you have you're a brand new agent in the business. Initials. Broker's obligations, as we said here, is to assist the seller in locating qualified brokers. These are just things that you do on a day-to-day basis. These are the things that you need to take the time to read. And as I said, I'm just giving you kind of the highlights and things that I point out that are kind of things that trip people up. Okay, the seller, check mark, will provide a seller's property disclosure. State of New Mexico, non-disclosure state. What does that mean? That means that if somebody has been renting the property, or maybe the parents owned it and they're deceased, and who's ever left selling it, they may not know. So if they do not know, then they will not provide a seller's property disclosure statement. However, transparency is the name of the game. We know that in this business. If they've been living in that property and they understand it, why not be transparent? If there was a leak in the roof, tell the people that are going to be buying it, hey, there was a leak. It's been repaired. It's been fixed. Too often we get into scenarios where people say, well, I don't know. I don't know if it's ever been. Well, there's an opportunity to say, I don't know if there's what kind of wiring's in here. But you will never or should ever fill out that property disclosure for your client. Big, big time no-no. I've been in situations with other brokers that all of a sudden the seller says, hey, I'm selling this property as is. Here's all the things I know. Here's the seller's disclosure. And people come back and say, well, you didn't disclose. Well, they did to the best of their knowledge. That's all you can expect, all right? Next one here, this is a new one that we're seeing more and more and more, is audio and video surveillance. You know, do they have that? I put down here the Ring doorbells. A lot of people have a Ring doorbell, I do. So technically, why do you want to disclose that? Is that they are or they're not using it, okay? The reality is this is where it comes down. This is where the unfair advantage becomes a real problem. You're the listing broker. They have a Ring doorbell, records. You can go back and take a look. and they are standing now in front of the house after they looked at it, and they say, wow, we really love this house. But you know what? Between you and me, buyer's broker, we'd pay full boat for this house. We might even pay a little bit more than asking. But let's start at offering a little less. That's disclosure, right? So you never want to be caught up in a situation that the people went and they're looking at the Ring doorbell and they look back and they say, wow, the buyer said they'd pay more than what we have it on the market for. Never be there, because remember, you could be the broker on the other side, being that buyer, that somebody's recorded you. So if you're out showing property as a buyer's agent and you notice there's a Ring doorbell, just say, hey, point at it. We'll discuss it in the car. Okay. Oral offers. Broker shall not be required to submit to seller oral offers. This is not HGTV, the real estate porn channel. We all watch that, right? And I'm always amazed watching these guys. They're making the phone calls. Okay, well, our client is willing to pay you this. And well, our client's been, don't do it. Everything shall be required in writing. Okay? Doesn't mean anything what people can do. It's all in writing. So be careful of that, because you'll get brokers who'll say, well, see if they'll take this, and we'll take, just say, well, write me a purchase agreement. Be happy to present it to them. Okay? Another one that's happened over the years, the offer letters, or what we used to call the love letters. This is the listing side, so remember that. So all of a sudden, we're basically telling the seller in our MLS, or on our MLS, we will not accept any kind of offer letters. Why? Okay. What has happened in the past, people will send a letter with their purchase agreement saying, well, this is just the most perfect house in the world for us. As you know, my mother, she no longer is able to climb the stairs. And you know what? It's just such a flat roof. It's a flat floor house. And we think her wheelchair will fit through all of this. And this is just the perfect house. She absolutely loved it. She loved the way that she could access into the backyard and all the beautiful plants out there. And guess what? Then some other offer comes in, full boat, full price, the whole 9 yards. And that's who your seller says, I'm going to sell it to. The case has been that there has been discrimination suits against that seller, and you're going to get dragged into it as a broker because you're discriminating because that individual was handicapped. I mean, that's just one of many things. So the only way to get away with this is, you know what? We are not accepting the offer letters, the love letters. It's gone to that. And unfortunately, that's the way our society has grown to be. Again, seller's initials. All right, here we go. This is the one that we were talking about earlier, and that's that clear cooperation policy. All multiple listing services require brokers to enter in residential listings into the MLS for dissemination within 1 business day of conducting any public marketing. 1 business day before conducting any public marketing. So that's the sign. Let's start there. So you're going to take a listing. Well, you better, before you put that sign out there, you better be ready to rock and roll on the MLS. Now, you can do it 24 hours ahead of time, but I warn people all the time, don't get caught. It's just as easy to get your listing up with your sign in the back of your car, ready to go. And guess what? It's now up on the MLS. You're driving over there and put the sign up. It's a lot easier to explain to a broker that I was just driving over to put my sign up, that I put the listing, than it is to say, yeah, the sign's been there for 3 days saying coming soon. That's a no-no. Same thing happens to any kind of marketing material. You can't do it. Get the listing up, then market it. Okay? There's some little kinks around it for the 24 hours. There's some ways that people try to get it up on Friday and so forth. I get it. I totally do. So I've actually put in this video, as well as the annotated, go watch the National Association of Realtors website, go in there and write clear cooperation policy. That's the easiest way for me to continue to explain it to people. And I have people all the time trying to figure out ways of doing this. How can I market it to everybody in the office? I don't have a problem with us communicating that this listing's coming. Where I do have a problem is all of a sudden somebody getting an email saying, hey, I've got this listing, and that particular other broker going, oh, wow, I know my friend over at that other brokerage has been looking for this, forward it. At that moment, you've just marketed that property to the public. So if you really are hell-bent on trying to market it 24 hours beforehand, come see me. Let's make sure that you have a clear understanding of how that marketing works. But the easiest way is just go onto the website. You can see I put it right there. It's YouTube, and you can see exactly how NAR is doing. This is not just a Santa Fe Association of Realtors rule. This is a national rule now. Okay. Talk a little bit more about surveillance. We talked about that a little bit, video surveillance. Talked a little bit about intellectual property, which belongs to you. And broker's consent to required to modify, okay? These are the things that the seller authorizes for it to be on the MLS. Yes, you want that. Yes, you want it on the internet because, you know, we're going to feed it through everything from Zillow to apartments.com to realtor.com and on and on and on. But you need them to say, yes, they want it. If they do not want it on there, then no. And then you will have the opportunity to say, please do not publish this on all the website SFAR has. I don't know why you would want to do that, but there are people who are very concerned that when you're photographing everything inside a house, maybe they have $1 million paintings on the wall. I don't know, but they don't want other people to know. What easier way than to figure out what an individual has in their home is by just going on to the website to see that. Signage, yeah, you certainly would hope to have a sign out there. Keys, meaning you're going to be using a lockbox. You're going to be also obtaining any kind of property information if you can from the seller. It's always helpful to have knowledge about, well, what do the utilities normally run here? The lockbox, because you're going to install them more than likely on their front door. And of course, the photography that you're going to be taking photography. So this is pretty much the norm. Doesn't mean it's the rule. But for the most part, when you're filling out your first listing agreement, these are the things that you're going to be checking off and communicating to the seller. Very good. And of course, you're going to be reading every line so you can understand what you're actually going to be talking to the seller about. Here's that one that we talked about way up front there on broker duties and responsibilities. Offers broker to divulge. You can say terms or existence. The safe bet is existence. You want to be able to tell the other broker when they call you, hey, you have an offer on that property. Yes, we do. Next thing they might ask is, I certainly do. Well, what are their terms on it? Well, what they're really wanting to know is, wow, is this a cash offer? Is it are they having to loan money? Is it a VA? They're trying to get that unfair advantage. In this case, if you only agree to the existence offer, that is it. And you can turn right around to that broker who asked you, well, what kind of terms? And I'm not at privilege to divulge that. Please make us the best offer you can. And, you know, we may be in a multiple counter offer. We don't know. But this offer of ours is going to, you know, we'll be terminating, or we're going to have to act on the offer we have on the table. So if you want to get in, hurry up. So that can play to your advantage as well. Open houses. Right now, we're kind of stuck with the COVID a little bit with open houses. You can do an open house for your client at this point, but you do have to follow the rules that we are all mandated by the state of New Mexico. At this point, as of this recording, we're in the red zone, which means we can still do it, but no more than 5 people gathering. So if you're in a property, you may be you and maybe your friend broker. So there's 2 of them used up, no more than 3 inside the house. And don't let anybody else go in there. Some of the simple ways of doing it is simply, you know, putting a text or putting a sign outside on the door that says, please text me at this number so I know you're here so I can show you the property. And you can go out and say, or stick your head out and say, I'm sorry, I've got some people in here right now, but as soon as they leave, I'll get you in. So there's ways of doing it. Of course, the other way is a lot of people are doing the Matterport or the virtual tour open houses. So they're being open houses, 24/7. Another way to market it. Other items that you have to be authorized by your seller is to, yes, the seller wants the address, of course, on the internet. And the other one does not want viewers to provide comments on blogs. So if you're doing a blog, you might even be doing Facebook that you're monitoring. You really don't want those kind of comments because maybe they're not the kind of comments that your seller wants to see. Oh, went to this house, way too small of a bathroom or too little bit of, you don't want those negative comments. So I always say does not want. The other one here, number C, seller does not want the site operator to allow what they call an automated estimate of value. We don't do that here anyway in Santa Fe, but it's just, an automated system that we don't have. So easier for us, does not. We were talking earlier about trying to market the property ahead of time. Okay, this is where that waiver comes in. Waiver of marketing through or delayed entry into the multiple listing service due to the MLS rules. If while listing is withheld from dissemination through the MLS, broker may not conduct any public marketing of the property. Broker may only market the property within the broker's brokerage. So that's, talking to your friend here and says, hey man, I'm going to be having this listing coming up. That doesn't mean you can go out there and show it immediately because you don't really have it listed. All right. Brokers shall not market the property through the MLS. Seller acknowledged he or she has been informed of the marketing benefit MLS and hereby waives such marketing benefits. That's one way of saying I really don't want it even on the MLS. Okay. Tenant occupied. Okay. Oh, here's one thing. This is an important one. I apologize. Brokers shall begin marketing the property in the MLS within 48 hours of. So if you took the listing today, but you're not really going to do it until the end of the month, two different dates. One is I got the listing. The other one, this is when I can start marketing it. But do not cross the two of them over. Whatever you say is the day you're going to be marketing it, that's the day you're going to be marketing it. Say, I get way crazy because I get too many emails from SFAR with brokers who have said, oh, I'm going to go ahead and start saying coming soon. Wow. Okay, here we go. Tenant occupied. It's even more so important during the COVID. You can see that you have tenant consent form. Property is currently being occupied by a tenant. You have to get written consent for the following items, okay? And it's COVID as well with other documents. This is relating to the photography. You got to get a consent form, and that's a form that you fill out for your seller and say, hey, I know you have a tenant. Could you please have them sign this? Because within that, we want to be able to go there and photograph the property and inside the house. And what are you photographing? Potentially their items, not necessarily the owners. It could be their paintings on the wall. And the same thing goes to holding an open house. Okay. If the seller is unable to obtain such authorization, broker shall not hold an open house for the property. So you need that consent form. Something that I'd like to point out at this point, I get a lot of calls to saying, Tom, what forms do I need? Truthfully, all the forms are now being outlined. So if there's a tenant in it, well, guess what? You better be having in your documents the tenant consent form. And throughout the listing agreement, it tells you. Same thing happens on the purchase agreement. It now tells you which other additional forms you have if you have this situation. Okay. Compensation. This is where things changed a little bit. Excuse me. Let me take a little drink of water here. Sorry about that, guys. And I've had some brokers call me confused on how this is changed. And really all it comes down is reading it because the changes are pretty self-explanatory. So first thing, in the event the following, seller agrees to pay the brokerage firm compensation of the sale of property, 6%. Sales price, okay? That's not hard to figure out, 6%. If you have a different figure that you need to communicate, please communicate to me about it, saying, well, why are you doing it this amount? If you have one that's for 7 or 8%, I'll be all over it all day long. Good for you. But it's when you start dropping down below the 5% stuff that I get a little concerned. So come talk to me about it, because it's just our unwritten policy that we do a 6% in KW. The GRT, okay? The gross receipts tax is also a responsibility of the sale. It's very important that you explain this well to your sellers, because a lot of them get concerned with the fact saying, wait a minute, I'm paying you 6%, then I'm paying you 8.4375%. What are you telling me? No, you're only paying for the services rendered. What I normally do is I tell them this, guys, when you go to closing, they're going to charge you a fee. And as you know, they're going to add on the gross receipts tax that goes to the governor of the state of New Mexico. It's no different than when you go and buy something at the store. You buy something at the store, then there's gross receipts tax. The same thing happens on services. So if my commission on $600,000 for the property of this thing is at 6% for both the buyer's broker and the seller's broker, well, you're talking what, $3,600 or $360 that you will be paying toward those services as well. But explain it. Where do you find the codes? Because the codes are different throughout. You can find them in our DocuSign under a custom folder there. Or if you're still using .loop, you can go in and find KW Office, and the docs are in there, and it shows it to there. And all those GRTs are different, which is the county. If you can't absolutely find it, email me, and I will be happy to email one to you. And then you can keep a hard copy of it. Last thing is you can always go to Google and say New Mexico's gross receipt tax, and the whole chart will come up and probably be the same thing. Okay, so you're going to charge your percentage for your commission, and they are also going to be charged for whatever the percentage is. I normally like to put in mine here, it would be for City of Santa Fe 001-123, 8.4375%. I actually like to write it out, because when you're going through the listing agreement with your seller, you're transparent. You're telling them exactly what's there. This I just showed you how to find it here in .loop, okay? Okay, here's the next one. If the property is made, if the sale of the property is made by the seller within 90 or 120 days after the term of the agreement, the broker submits to the seller a notice of other offers within 5 days. That's protection period. So you're going along big, fat, and happy. You've got a situation that, the agreement didn't sell, and they terminate. So all of a sudden, one of the people that you've shown the property to comes back and says, wow, I'm going to buy this property now. The seller says, great, because I don't have to pay a commission. Wrong. If you were the procuring cause of that, between that protection period of 90 to 20 days, whichever one you pick, and it should be one or the other, 90 days is long enough, some cases 120, depending on how quickly properties are selling. You want to protect yourself and say, no, I was a procuring cause for that. That's all that is. So you never want to get in a situation. When I talk to my sellers when I'm doing a listing, and I put seller within 90 days protection period, I said, well, I have to put this in, but basically what it means is, and you folks aren't this kind of people. That would be like, hey, I show a property and they say, oh, we really like it. And somehow or another you bump into him at the store and say, man, we really like your property, but, and you say, well, you know what, I might be able to save us some money, because, I can fire Tom and then I'll sell it directly to you. And I said, I know you folks aren't like that, but it does happen. Oh, no, not us, Tom. Go ahead, put 90 days in. So just kind of how you keep that cooperation going with them. All right, this is where the change came. This is brand new cooperation. In the event of a sale, seller authorized brokerage, meaning us, Keller Williams, to share the sales commission with a cooperating brokerage, meaning the other company, that procured the buyer as follows: 3%. In the old days, we used to put 3% seller, 3% buyer. So they cleaned it up, and they basically are saying, if we're cooperating with another brokerage, we are willing to give them 3%. That's what that is. So in the old days, it was 3% seller, 3% buyer. They cleaned it up. Or plus GRT, that's good, or a flat dollar amount. So if you had an agreement to say, okay, versus it being 3%, and you had an agreement hypothetically that said we will pay the brokerage $10,000 to sell the property versus a sales percentage, then you might say $5,000 plus GRT to the cooperating commissioner, cooperating broker, the commissioner. So it hasn't really changed. It just means that here, the brokerage firm procured that the buyer as follows 3% of the sales commission. So you got 6% up here, 3% down here, same stuff, okay? In our brokerage, we don't really do a flat dollar. If you've got something like that, you need to come visit with me about it. But for the most part, it's going to say 6% up here, 3% up here, there, okay? And of course, the seller's initial. That's just telling them how the cooperation works. Bonus, okay? Seller paying a bonus to buyer's broker, buyer's broker, buyer's broker. Check only if applicable in addition to the sales commission as set forth. Seller will pay a bonus of 1% of the sales price plus GRT, or $500 plus GRT, okay? And that's a buyer's bonus. So when you're doing your marketing, it says, seller will also pay a $1,000 bonus fee if it's closed by January 15th, 2021. There you go. So the rest of this pretty much stayed all the same. Compensation for lease, particularly if you're a new broker, you're not doing that. We don't really do property management at this point in Keller Williams, so this is getting above your toolkit or your pool of knowledge. We want to make sure that we probably are clicking does not apply. If there's something unusual about doing the compensation for lease, please come see me and we'll discuss how that all works. Authority of owner record, okay? This is basically saying, okay, except as otherwise disclosed to the broker in writing, the person or person designated as seller above and in the signature block of this agreement is the owner of record of the property and has the authority to enter into this agreement. Seller further warns that there are no other owners of records of this property. And that is very important because the same way that you wrote it up on top, the way they take things legally, it might be the estate of, the living trust of, okay? Let's say you've had a parent pass on. There's records saying this person is the trustee, however it may be, or it is John Smith solely, whatever it may be, or it may be Mr. and Mrs. John Smith. The bottom line is this really gives you the meat and potatoes of why I highlight this. You are the owner of this property, correct? You don't have anybody else. So there's no deeds out there, no quick clean deeds. There's nothing that is precluding you from selling the property. It isn't like they're not going to find out, because as soon as title starts to do an investigation and doing all their background checks, they're going to find out if they're the correct owners or not. And believe me, I've run into that, okay? The insurance, the seller will maintain the insurance coverage. Believe me, this is big. I'm going through a major issue with this right now. Why do you want the seller to maintain their insurance and personal injury, property damage? Okay, here's the story. All of a sudden, you're doing an open house for the seller. Somebody comes in, they trip and they fall, walking into the garage. They break their ankle. Maybe worse, they dislocate their hip. Who knows what happens? Okay. The person's property insurance should take care of any kind of issues. You're going to document everything that you possibly can, because otherwise it's going to come back at you later. You want to make sure that is resolved and taken care of. if there's any issues, even to the point that you're communicating to their insurance companies that this happened during the time of the open house, you know, no fault of mine, that's what happened. So the seller shall notify the casualty insurance company and obtain any endorsements necessary to maintain insurance coverage, okay? So those are some things that have recently come into play here at Keller Williams for me. I want to make sure that you are finding out you guys have insurance, right? And that insurance does not go away until that property is sold, because the last place that goes on the other side with the buyers, you want to make sure that those insurance overlap, because lo and behold, something happens and a fire occurs and wow, nobody has insurance, it's gone. Okay. Other things you want to find out, is this a short sale? You know, is there any kind of less pendants against this property? Is it free and clear? Where are you at? Are you current with your mortgage company? In today's market, we're seeing more and more of this because people, unfortunately, have had a real rough time with COVID. Maybe they've lost their job. You know, now they want to sell their house, and you know they're sitting there going, "Oh my goodness, the bank is going to foreclose on us," or they're going to, you know, we've got a less pendants, a letter from them, and they don't tell you. And you go along dumb, fat, and happy, saying, "Okay, yeah, we're going to sell your house," and boom, you get to the point that they're doing a title search on it, and then boom, what pops up? Less pendants. What? Well, you can't sell this house. You've got to pay off your debt. Well, you're going to be doing a lot more jumping through the hoops with the bank to say, well, we do have this property on the market. Will you allow us to continue to have? And, you know, once they pay off the house, they will pay you off. Hopefully there's enough equity at the close. That's where this whole thing about bankruptcies and short sales come up in the real world. So verify that they don't have any kind of actions coming at them from their bank, all right? It'll ask you about if they've declared any bankruptcy, and also it'll ask you any kind of benefits from a reload company. Right now up in Los Alamos, so there's a lot of houses that have people are coming into, and you know they're trying to sell their house or whatever. The reload company will be laboratory. So just find out. That's what you want to do. Okay. Read. Let's see, important notice to seller. Broker is not responsible for verifying the authenticity of a pre-qual or proof of funds letter. That's another get out of jail card for us. What does that mean? Okay, somebody makes an offer on your property and they say, hey, yeah, we're going to pay cash. Well, let's get a letter of verification from your financial institution that you have this money. A lot of people, you know, a little bit more crooked mind than me. They have a great ability to change things, creating a wonderful stationery from Bank of America. They are good at Photoshop. Send you a letter. Well, all this does is say we're not responsible for verifying it. They're going to find out if it's a loan real quick because the loan company is going to do that. But it may be a little harder in you get down to title days and you find out it's a scam. God forbid. Not, you know, I don't think 9 times out of 10 it's real, but all this is just one of those get out of jail cards. It's not our responsibility to do that. Now, the other thing that happens, and particularly as a listing broker, all of a sudden you'll just get yourself, somebody will send you over, well, here's their screenshot of their checking account or their savings account that shows that they've got the money in the bank. That's not a proper letter of verification. That's just somebody who took a screenshot on their checking account today or their savings account today. Tomorrow they go out and buy a $60,000 Mercedes. Do they still have that amount? No. What you want is a letter of verification saying that they can afford buying this house cash. That's a letter. The other one that you want is a pre-qual letter, and that's going to be coming from their financial institution, okay? Or, you know, in our case, let's say it's Legacy or Waterstone. You'll get one from Annette or from Sandra saying, hey, these guys are pre-qual, okay? Inspection reports, here's a fun one. The NMAR purchase agreement provides that if a buyer opts to terminate the purchase agreement after conducting inspection of the property The buyer is not required to provide a copy of the inspection report to the seller unless otherwise directed by the seller in writing. Bottom line, buyer buys the inspection report. It belongs to them. It does not belong to the seller, okay? Further, if the buyer objects to issues identified during the inspection, here it is, the buyer is only required to provide a copy of the section of the report on which the objection is based unless otherwise directed by the seller in writing. So they go through the property, they do an inspection, they find out that the hot water heater is not working properly anymore. That's the only section you should be getting from the inspection report. Why? Because anything else that's in that inspection report that was not objected to, you have now just received notice of something else wrong. That becomes a disclosure issue. So maybe they can live with, they only want to object on the hot water heater, and maybe they can live with the roof that has hail damage on it because it doesn't bother them that they have those little pits up there. But now that becomes a disclosure. So when you get an offer from your purchase agreement and they go through that process of inspection, make sure you are communicating to the other broker, do not send me the entire inspection. We're still fighting that quite a bit. I think here at KW, we've all gotten very good at annotating and just clipping on our end. So that's a good thing. Okay. I'm not going to go through foreign sellers. That's the whole FIRPTA. Lead base, I always highlight that because we all know anything before 1978 is a lead base issue. Okay. PID at this point in Santa Fe, we do not have any. Okay, so is the property located in public improvement district? Yeah. In Albuquerque, there's a couple. HOA, this is a fun one, Homeowners Condominium Units Association. HOA, meaning homeowners, CUOA, meaning condo, okay? And again, I like to point out that they tell you exactly, sellers required to provide a specific disclosure to the buyer for HOA, see NMAR 4600 information. If there's more, 4650, HOA, 4700. More. So these are the kind of docs that you need to pull up to verify that you have those so you meet and get completed for compliance. Okay. Consent to electronic transmission of documents to use of electronics. The parties do, 9 times out of 10 do. If you're particularly in COVID, but if you're using DocuSign, Dotloop, or Instinet, that's electronic signature. So you definitely want to make sure your seller says it's okay to do that. Much more. So at the end of the day, the entire agreement, boom, 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 any kind of addendums have to be attached to this stuff. And lastly, we no longer will be required to use the separate wire fraud in our compliance because now in the listing agreement, hopefully now in January, we'll also see in the purchase agreement, it is given the wire fraud alert of which your seller will be signing and printing their name, okay? This is all, I put this in here, get as much information as possible. Of course, you know, try to get their emails, get all that information. Never know, somebody may have to pick up the ball from you and they're looking for you, and my goodness, that's a tough place to be, okay? Seller's broker's name, that is you, your name, and your signature, okay? Seller's broker's name, qualifying broker's name, that is me. And in this office it is 20394. If you're in Silver City, it's different. If you're in Bell Tower, it's different. And if you're in Clovis, it's different. So we have those numbers. They each know their own. The office, of course, is here. Our address as well. They made the error. I think they got it cleaned up now. There was an extra piece of paper. If you pull it up, I always type the pages intentionally blank. So that's it in a nutshell for doing a listing. I know this is painful. That's why you're probably on your second or third glass of wine. Just review it. Again, email me, tom@truheo.com, Trujillo. See if I can put that even up here in the chat. I guess I can't. And we'll take it from there. And you can just email me, say, hey, I need an annotated copy. I know then you'll be looking at the listings. And right now, that's what we need. We're very soft as of this recording of listings in the Santa Fe area throughout the country. So this is what you're going to be doing, some communication on your lead generation. And you can get some listings, because that's the name of the game. And listings are great because you always know that you're always going to probably get 50% of the deal. So with that said, you guys have a great day today and enjoy it. Thank you very much, and we will be in touch with you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.